Okay. So, we'll just get right into it. Jeremy, I'm so fucking excited to have you on the podcast. Um, so can you just introduce yourself for those people that don't know you, who you are and what you do?
My name is Jeremy Margent from MushMore Supplements. I'm from Philadelphia, originally from North Jersey. Was a math teacher, professor, and then always interested in plant medicine, but never too interested. COVID happened, kind of changed my whole life. I know it changed a lot of people's lives, and basically jumped full into microdosing mushrooms and recently have stopped teaching math and have been pursuing a microdose mushroom brand full time.
Yes, so cool. Um, how long did you stop teaching? How long ago?
It's been 2 years now, and
Okay.
part of me feels like I miss it, and I definitely do. I miss like my kids and the relationship building and all of that, but there's nothing that I'd trade for Mushmore. Mushmore is my passion right now.
Awesome. So what has your personal journey with mushrooms looked like to the point that you are now committing yourself to this business of microdosing?
So I was first introduced to it in high school, which I think like a lot of people are as a drug, and like more recreational, something to do to just like get messed up and have fun. So I think when I was 16, I did that with a couple friends. You get like the full eighth. You don't really know what you're doing. Mushrooms were way bit different back then. This is about 20 years ago, and had a great experience. We laughed all night. We had great time. And then two, when I like think back about it, there was some like spiritual healing and like feeling good aspects of it, but I wasn't thinking about it as much so and wasn't intentional to do that. So I didn't notice it as much. But I remember like we had conversations about just like animals and nature and how everything should belong to everyone and how we're all connected. And but we were doing it in a silly way and just laughing. Never thought much of it. In college, I did that a few times. Again, always just for fun. I was drinking a lot in college, doing a bunch of other stuff, and not really thinking much about anything, just trying to have fun. And then I'd say my later 20s, when I graduated college and was like trying to grow up, a lot of bad habits kind of stuck with me. I was drinking way too much, but it wasn't really affecting me in the worst way. I was still like successful. I got a job teaching, had a few homes. I was running an Airbnb side business. And so never like hit rock bottom really. When COVID happened, or before COVID actually, I wasn't doing horribly, but I knew I wanted something more and that I could do more and I needed a change. So that was 2019. I went sober from alcohol and had my first year really with like just a clear head. And that was really mind opening to me. I didn't realize before just how upset I was, how angry, how much I was hiding with alcohol, how much I was missing with alcohol, whether it be like just blacking out or just not realizing things, all of that. And that was great. I was like, oh, I did it. I'm grown up. I feel good. Everything's good. I thought I was ahead of, or I thought like my depression was past me and all of that. And then COVID happened and kind of everything came back. And I was like, oh God, this is tough. I'm not feeling too good. I thought I was good, and actually, I'm not. I don't know what I want to do. I'm pretty unhappy. The world is just crazy. And randomly, a friend of mine actually owed me some money and didn't have the money to pay me, and was like, "Oh, I have a bag of mushrooms. Could I give you that?" I was like, "All right, whatever." I just kind of didn't want to talk to him anymore, so I was
That's crazy.
let me just take it. And I remember tripping in college or high school and being like, I don't know if I really want that right now or if I can handle that in my head right now. So I kind of just took like a little piece and put it into a smoothie, not knowing about microdosing at all, not thinking about it at all. And I had a great day. And like instantly my thoughts changed. I don't like to say I don't think I was suicidal, but I definitely thought about stuff like that way more often than you should. Uh,
Mm.
and instantly that sounded crazy to me. I was like, why was I ever thinking like that? And I just started uh, making better decisions. And it literally was one day things switched, and then I'd kind of I'd next day I'd take a little piece, put it in my smoothie, I'd be like, oh, like this is great. And then I started doing some research, and I was like, oh, this is actually a thing. I had no idea. And then basically a few times I put a little too much into the smoothie where I was kind of tripping, which wasn't a bad thing. But I was like, oh, this is great. But if you had like a consistent dose, or you knew exactly what you're getting and what to expect, and you're not during COVID, I wasn't working as much. So if I got a little trippy, it was okay to like take some time, um, just under my covers or whatever you do when
Hmm.
a little like that. But I was like, oh, if when the real world starts again, like I don't know if you want that. You want to have a consistent dose. So I started putting them in capsules, and then when you made capsules, you kind of end up making a bunch uh, just for like efficiency, so you'd have extra. And basically started sending to maybe like 10, 20 people, saying like, hey, try this out. This was just awesome for me. Mostly like artists, musicians, or people who I knew were like going through some depression, and could maybe use a little boost. And the 10, 20 people reaction was amazing. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is great. And I was like, it's real, right? Like, it's not just me. And that was really the beginning of everything. And from there, I was like, this medicine's too powerful. Um, Everyone should have access to it. And I kind of was, you hear about people committing suicide every day. You hear about all of the big pharma issues, and it's like, we need to fight that. And I think the best way to fight it is to get mushrooms in as many people's hands as possible.
Yeah. That's so crazy. You found it accidentally because your friend owed you money and he gave you a bag of mushrooms. That's like so funny.
It's funny, but it's also to me, I'm gonna already. I wanted to wait a little to sound hippy dippy, but I'll just sound hippy dippy from the start. But I think the mushrooms are working before they're even in you, and the mushrooms knew I was having like issues and was like, find a way to get to this guy, and connected me to him who owed money and gave it to me because that sounds crazy, but after 5 years of doing this, the amount of people I've interacted with in the most random ways, and you're like, what a coincidence. It's like, no, it's not a coincidence. It's the mycelium network connecting somehow. I don't know how to
Hmm.
explain it, but I really think that's it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, and I mean, I think the testimonials from y'all's Signal and Telegram and comments on your social media shows how potent it is and like it's like it's mental health and it's the wellness of the collective and it's like honestly the biggest I think goal or like venture you can commit yourself to. I'm like fully in the cult of mushrooms. Like I feel like I'm always like talking to people about how amazing mushrooms are because I feel like it's this weird thing where it's this like it's medicine from the earth that has been totally vilified and rebranded to seem really scary and really dangerous so that they can, patent medicine and sell it. That's what I think.
100%. I got 25 thoughts coming right now. Hopefully, they all come out and make sense. But one quick little thing, common side effects on Cartoon Network just came out and basically is exactly about that. It's like a cartoon about a pharmaceutical company who's trying to stop people from finding mushrooms because the mushrooms can solve all of their problems. And it's pretty cool. Definitely recommend checking it out. But also, you mentioned the testimonials and to me, I get them all the time, and they still like surprise me. I'm like, no way, like we're really doing this. But the first 20 people I sent to all said, "Hey, this is great. I'm loving it, feeling good." A couple artists were like, "Oh, I had such good creativity when I was blocked before. Thank you." And that all felt good. But I'd say within the first 100 people we sent to, I got a message from this guy, Josh. I'm not going to say his name or any or more than just his first name, but Josh basically hit me up and said that he was going to kill himself, like had a date to do it, a way to do it, was like lining up all his ducks of like trying to clean his house, this, that, but he was basically ready to do it and came across a TikTok of ours and was like, "Oh, I'm going to give this one last shot. Like, we'll see." And he said that first day he took the microdose, instantly was like, "I'm not going to kill myself anymore. That's dumb." And when he told me that, that was just like, yo, this is insane. It feels like we just saved someone's life. And
Yeah.
I think a big thing with this, I don't really like to admit too much for a few reasons, but like a lot of what I'm doing is illegal. That sucks. But as an old math professor, something I used to say is like, you don't need to be a genius in math to know that like multiple is more than one. And it's like, I'm risking my life. That sucks. But if we're saving multiple lives, that's a good deal, right? And at this point, we've served over 10,000 people. And I'd say the message from Josh was one of the wildest we've gotten, but we've gotten at least 10 to 20 like that of people who were close to committing suicide and then didn't. And then hundreds of people who are like, my life is just infinitely better now than it was before. And to me, that seems like basic math of a lot of people's lives being improved and risking one. It
Mhm.
sucks being the one that's risking, but I think it's a good deal.
Yeah. That's why I think you're mushroom Jesus.
Yeah, I'm trying to be with the hair. I'm
With
trying
the hair.
to.
Um, the way that I found mushrooms was I think I heard a podcast episode with Paul Stamets on the Joe Rogan podcast. And it was like, his podcasts are like 3 hours long. So they go like super deep into the science behind it and like all the studies and all the stuff. And I was like, okay, like I want to try this. And I started microdosing, and I have historically had really bad seasonal affective disorder. Generally, my brain just leans more towards depression. I think it's genetic and winters were so hard for me. And I remember the first winter I microdosed. I remember just feeling like I wasn't treading water anymore. Like I just felt like, oh, I'm okay.
When was that?
That was in 2019.
And where did you find the microdose, or how did you get it? Or
Um, I think it was through a friend. Like I think I had chocolate bars, which were higher doses, but I think someone at my work knew someone and I bought through them. And that's the thing too for sourcing is like it's so tricky to find someone that sells them that's reputable and then online, and we can like get into that later about um just all of that. But I want to touch on like if someone's listening to this and they're like, "Okay, that's great." Like it helps with depression and all these things, but like can you talk on like what actually happens in the body and the brain when mushrooms are in your system? Like why would it help someone with mental health issues?
so I'll preface it with I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to have the most technical response, but I think this makes the most sense to me, and there is science behind it that explains what I'm saying a bit. But I like to think that when you're younger, or just when you're a person, people say things to you, or the way you experience life is gonna kind of imprint things into your brain. And the more you hear it, the more it's gonna get imprinted into your brain. So like I'm visualizing right now a bunch of sand and a stick going through the sand. And like every time my dad called me dumb, didn't really happen, maybe it did, but every time he called me dumb, that stick is going through the sand and it's becoming more um, distinct, and it keeps on going and it gets bigger and bigger, and the bigger it is, obviously that's harder to change. So a lot of times you think you're stupid when you're younger, or you don't think you can do this, or you think you're sad about whatever, and by the time you're older, all that stuff is pretty imprinted into your brain. What mushrooms seem to do is kind of just wipe that clean and give you a clean slate and be like, no, you don't need to give in to all of these old thought patterns. You can make new thought patterns. And then the reason why I like stamets, and I agree, lion's mane is a great mushroom to take in conjunction with psilocybin, is lion's mane helps you create new thought patterns on your brain. So the psilocybin's kind of helping you make a clean slate. It also helps you make new thought patterns, but with the lion's mane, then you can say like, no, I'm smart, and you can make your new stick in the sand, and make the way you want your brain to be your choice, not what everyone else has been saying. If does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. So it's kind of like it increases your neuroplasticity and your ability to have flexibility around core belief systems.
Yep. And then I guess this is a little bit maybe of a tangent. I love the science. I think the science is great. Uh, but also, at the end of the day, this is as much as we understand of psilocybin or about a bunch of things. But I feel like no one really knows why it works or how it works, just like no one really knows a bunch of stuff. To me, because there's still a lot of people who argue like, oh, psilocybin, it's actually just the placebo effect, and it's like, who cares if it's the placebo effect? If people are getting results, I don't really care how it's happening, what's happening in the brain. It's good to study, but I don't think
Mm.
it really matters. Did 10 people feel better? Yeah. So that, to me, that's like kind of what all that matters. But I know I'm different and weird.
Well, I know there's like a visual too of a brain not on psilocybin and then a brain on psilocybin, and it shows you all the neuroconnections. Like how there's so many more neuroconnections. And I do feel like when I've taken not so much microdosing, I feel it as much, but when I've taken higher doses of mushrooms, I feel like just a greater understanding of the world and like my place in it, and like just a more of like a zoomed out view. And I think that's why, like, I know they use it in therapy a lot for people that are terminally ill. And to me, that makes total sense because when I'm taking a certain dose of mushrooms, I'm like, I see where my death fits into the universe and it just feels right. I don't know how to explain it beyond that.
No, 100%. I think I just saw an article today mentioning that another study about the effects of near or terminally ill people taking psychedelics, and I agree. And it's, to me, again, it's funny that they're trying to figure out like why that's the case, and it's like, cool, try and figure it out, but don't limit us from doing it until you figure it out. Like, if it's making people feel good when they're terminally ill, let people do it.
Yeah, like just because we don't have a scientific understanding of why it's working. Yeah. Can we talk on the difference between microdosing and macrodosing? Because we've talked briefly about, like you said, in college you did higher doses to have fun. I've like mentioned when I'm taking higher doses. And then there's microdosing, which is what MushMore is mainly focused on. So do you mind just speaking to the difference of microdosing versus macrodosing?
Yeah, of course. So I will say too, with a lot of what I'm saying, I guess you're on the internet all the time. There's gonna be people who probably disagree with everything I say just because that's what the internet does. So this is my interpretation of it. It varies a lot. I understand that, but microdosing is supposed to be about 1/10 of a usual dose, and it's supposed to be, from like what the experts say, subperceptual. So that means like you don't really feel it. It's there, but you're not like feeling much. Like a vitamin. You take a vitamin C in the morning, you're not feeling it, but you took it. Um, to me and to most of our users, most people don't like sub-perceptual 100%. They kind of want, I feel like minimally perceptual. They want to feel a little something, but they don't want to be,
That's what I like.
yeah, me too. That's what most
Yeah.
people want.
Just like I want to feel a little like, ooh,
Yeah.
giddy.
So,
Yeah.
so I feel like microdosing is a threshold of taking psychedelics that you can still go about your day in a productive manner, interact with friends, family, or strangers, and it's not going to really mess you up or get you off track.
Like you
Where,
can still drive, you can still work.
yep, exactly. Where in the middle is like a museum dose, what some people say might be you're feeling a little something. You're not like you have to be in bed under your covers or giggling like crazy and can't talk, but you're definitely probably not wanting to interact with too many people and you're in a zone. And then macro is tripping and basically I guess like the OG expert Terrence McKenna says that like a hero dose is 5 grams with a blindfold on, and that's how you really go into your head and see what's going on. Because like there's no distractions, there's no other things going on that are making you think things. You're thinking about what's going on in your head. Um, so it varies a lot too, because like what you when you take a gram will be very different from when I take a gram from someone else. So like saying an amount that you're taking it isn't really micro or macro because it's different for everyone. And then as mushrooms have become more and more popular, um, like when I was doing them in high school, I think there was maybe only one strain and they weren't like the best. Now they have all of these strains. And again, there's going to be mycologists who will argue about this all day and say a cube is a cube, with like psilocybe cubensis is psilocybe cubensis, where others will say, no, different strains definitely matter. And there's more and more lab work coming out. We've had lab work on, I think, like 8 of our strains so far. And you'll see I think one of our strongest ones is Gandalf. I think is like 8% psilocybin, where one of our weaker ones, I think maybe I don't know offhand, was like 2% psilocybin, which that's a big difference. So if you have a
Mm.
gram of the Gandalf, it's gonna definitely be different than a gram of something else, as well as all of the other compounds in the mushroom that can affect it. Because there's like in cannabis, they think there's an entourage effect. They think the same thing a lot of people do with mushrooms of the other compounds in conjunction can definitely affect you as well. So the main thing, I guess, to answer your question in short is a microdose is something you can kind of go about your day still and feel a little bit, where a macrodose is uh, kind of just a lot more and can be 2 grams or 5 grams or 10 grams, you're not at a certain point you're gonna get a lower return, but uh, yeah, I'd say just more is macro.
And then regarding dosings, and like you said, I like how you didn't mention specific doses because it is so different. And for me, one time I tried a microdose, or I don't even know what it was supposed to be, but I was like low key tripping, and it was the first time I had ever done mushrooms. And I remember being in the car on the way home from the gym going, oh my God, this car ride's really intense right now because I was like feeling the effects of the mushrooms even though it was a microdose. And so for me, I wouldn't call that a microdose because I was like freaking out in the car. So I'm super sensitive to drugs, to mushrooms, to any kind of like sugar, coffee. I'm really sensitive to any kind of substance that alters me at all. Whereas I have people that I've given MushMore supplements to, and they'll take two and they'll be like, I did not feel anything. And I'm like, well, and historically, these people have had less sensitivity to mushrooms. And so I think some people have different sensitivity levels. There's weight. And then can you also talk on SSRIs and just like that idea of, first of all, the resistance that they create to psilocybin, and then also just your experience with people moving from SSRIs to. mushrooms or microdosing.
Yeah, of course. So, a couple things about that too is, yeah, your diet that day can affect your tolerance. And then if you just take mushrooms multiple times in a row, or even within the last week, that's going to affect your tolerance a lot. Where if you haven't taken them for a month and you take them, you'll be a lot more sensitive. But we've had people who say, "Hey, I didn't feel anything," and say, "Hey, that's fine. That happens sometimes. Maybe you need a little more." But also, what did you take today? Like, what did you eat? And are you on any medications? And a lot of times people are like, oh, yeah, I'm taking this SSRI. And like, oh, that's probably it. A lot of people who are on SSRIs or who've been on SSRIs know it kind of makes you a zombie, and it doesn't make you as sad anymore, which is a good thing. And I'm not hating on SSRIs, they're good for some people. But um, in you're not feeling depressed anymore, that's great, but you're also a lot of times not feeling anything. It just blocks your senses. And it does that with mushrooms too. So if you're taking SSRIs and you take mushrooms, they're actually not going to have the effects that you're looking for because the SSRI is blocking them. So a lot of people who come to Mushmore are trying to get off of SSRIs. That's probably our biggest customer demographic. And um, a lot of people seem to taper off of the SSRIs while they're starting to try microdosing. It's hard to go off cold turkey with SSRIs. A lot of times you have like actual physical issues when you do it. So they'll taper off, they'll take less and less, and then maybe they'll have a dose day of microdosing. They won't take their SSRI that day, even though they're still like slowly taking little bits. And that's how we've seen a lot of people kind of taper off and not be hooked to SSRIs anymore. And
Wow.
it's crazy to me. That's like another thing I never realized before Mushmore. But one, how many people are on SSRIs is a lot, and two, how many people, and a lot of people actually prescribed like Adderall and like ADD medicine tried to come to us to get off. And it's wild, like how many people were put on these medicines when they were like 8 years old, like really long time ago, without being told the side effects, without being told like, hey, this is something you'll just take for the rest of your life. You're never going to get better. You just have to take this. And then before they know it, they're adults and they're hooked and they can't stop taking it. And if they stop, they either don't feel good or they're depressed or this, that, and you just get stuck in this cycle. It's just wild. It's a lot of people seem to be going or have gone through it.
Yeah. My thoughts on SSRIs is I'll just start too by saying I think there's times and places where people really are supported by SSRIs and antidepressants and all of those medications. And also, I think they're super over prescribed. Like I kind of feel like so many people are on them where it's like, and there's so many side effects that no one really talks about until they're experiencing it and they're like, wait, what the heck? Like, I mean, even the fact that people can't orgasm on SSRIs, like, I feel like that's actually devastating for people. That makes me really sad, especially for women. It's like, what the heck? And so the
That's
fact
sad.
that
That's
there's
sad for men too.
it's sad for men too. You're right. I just feel like, yeah, yeah, you're right. It's sad for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone that can't, yeah, that's it. Like, that's terrible. That's so sad, that this medication causes that when there's alternatives like mushrooms. But it's so, mm, what's the word? It's just, I feel like it's purposely been villainized,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's wild, and I think something that just like came in my head. This might seem a little random, but with microdosing, something that's been like a struggle or difficult with figuring all of this out is it actually does heal you. So a lot of people, like the person who said that they were going to kill themselves, we give a free trial. So everyone who like finds Mushmore, if you want to try microdosing, we got you to try it for the first time. because I think everyone should be able to try it and shouldn't be scared and shouldn't have price stop them. But a lot of people, so like let's say the 10,000 customers we've had, I'd say maybe 5,000, and those customers all got the free trial. I'd say maybe like 5,000 continued and got other products from us and continued buying from us. So a lot of people would look at that number and say, oh, that means only half the people liked your product. And it's like, no, of the other 50% who didn't buy again, a good 90% actually loved the product. They loved it so much, it worked, and they didn't need to buy anymore because like one round of microdoses was kind of all they needed to flip the switch, feel good, and it's not something they have to do forever. And
Wow, that's
as a
crazy.
as a person, and I like to think of myself just as a person rooting for other people. That's amazing. That's awesome. I don't like to think of as much more as like a company because I I don't know. I just don't want that thought pattern. It's no, we're just trying to help people. But if you're looking at it from a company perspective, it's not the best because like you're giving away something for free to people who then never need to use it again. That's not really going to be good for revenue. So there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies, I'm sure, that think things like that, and it's like they want the SSRI, that's a recurring revenue, literally until you die. Why would they invest $1 million to find something else that is going to make their 10 million customers gone? And it's like that's messed up. That's in their thoughts and that's like affecting their decisions, but it obviously is.
Yeah, that's a good point about the business model too, is like you said, some of these people have been on like meds since they were 8 years old or kids. And so that's a really great business model if your focus is the bottom line and creating big margins and lots of revenue and lots of returning customers. So yeah, it makes sense. There's a lot of money at stake, you know?
Yep, exactly. Which back to that show I told you, Common Side Effects is the whole thing of showing like these powerful people trying to like stop these people from figuring it out. And it's just a cartoon, but the whole time you're watching the cartoon, you're like, no, this is exactly what's happening, just not as like in your face, but it kind of is in your face.
Mm-hmm. And kind of going on a different route too, when it comes to, because like I said, I feel like the mushrooms have been lumped. I know when I was growing up in high school and even elementary school, we had this whole campaign that was say no to drugs. And so they're talking about, don't do heroin, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke weed, don't do mushrooms, don't smoke meth. And it's like lumped in with all of these other substances that have really different effects. And so when I was growing up, I really was under the impression that there wasn't a difference between heroin and meth and mushrooms. Like to me, it was all lumped in the same category. And so, when it comes to common misconceptions, what do you see as like very frequent questions that people ask, or just myths or misunderstandings that people have around mushrooms, microdosing, sourcing, like anything?
Uh, Again, I got like a million thoughts. It's hard to get them all
Yeah,
out
take your time.
quickly. But so one thing interesting with all of that is I agree. There's so much negative propaganda going out, and it's ingrained in us. And something like that's interesting, though, not even the dare and resisting drugs, but just a lot of art or like cartoons or movies or whatever. It's changing now, but even the same now, kind of sees mushrooms as like this scare, not the ones you're even eating, psychedelic ones, but like there's a potential you're going to find a mushroom that's going to kill you. And like, don't touch a mushroom when you see one in the forest because it can kill you. There's no mushroom that can kill you just from touching it. But you'd be like, there's so many people that think that, like, no, don't touch it if you don't know what it is. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Like, you have to eat a bad mushroom to die from it. So, like, right there, I feel like you can just see the negative propaganda at play and like how powerful it is and how many people really think just like all mushrooms are possibly bad, and that in actuality the poisonous ones are very few, you should definitely be careful. You shouldn't just eat any mushroom you see, but it's not nearly as dangerous as like they play it out to be. Um, so that's one thing. Another thing with like, I guess all of the negativity about, and you might need to repeat the question in a sec too, just because I'm going all off, but with the negative propaganda, with saying no to drugs and all of that, I'm kind of it seems like a little bit weird, maybe. Like I know heroin is worse than mushrooms, but also a lot of things are bad because there's no education about them and because there's like a black market on them. An easier example, I guess, for me to talk about just from my experience would be like cocaine or coca leaf. Like that's another one. I don't think cocaine is good at all. It's pretty bad. It's super addictive, whatever. But if you had legalized coca leaves, I don't think there'd be nearly as big of a cocaine issue when people can kind of take what they want in a safe manner. So I think you've been to South America. I don't know if you've ever had like coca tea, but coca tea in Peru was amazing and felt better than the coffee that I would drink in the morning. Not as much come down, and you're like, oh, uh, and there's probably not nearly as many Peruvians doing cocaine because they have coca leaf as an option to drink tea. And I kind of think the same thing with a lot of, I think mushrooms should definitely be legal and should be available for a lot of people. But a lot of these other drugs, even I question like they shouldn't be just like out on the street for anyone to do, but should they be uh, stigmatized as much as they are? I don't know. And someone who talks about it a lot is Dr. Carl Hart, I believe, from like NYU, and he says like I think he does heroin once a year, and he's like in a clinical setting when you have clean heroin and you know what you're doing and you take a precise amount and it's intentional with everything. Intention is what matters. He's like it's fucking amazing. But he's like I do it once a year in a lab with stuff that I know like where it was actually made and it's super safe. And he's like, the dangerous thing is when it's uh black market, you don't know what you're getting, you're abusing it, there's no intention and all of that. So it's interesting because like mushrooms is a very obvious one, I think, to me. But once you get into it and you start thinking more and more, it's like, hey, actually, we might be wrong with a lot of these drugs. We're just misinformed and we're seeing a lot of abuse, but maybe a lot of these things aren't as bad as they're played out to be.
That's really interesting.
Mm.
Heroin does sound actually amazing. I
Right?
was I read Julia Fox's book and I was like, okay, I get it now. Like
Yeah.
it sounds incredible. But I
Don't
when you were
wait. Disclaimer: don't do heroin.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. I mean, we're due, like it's your life, but no, I'm just musing. Like, yeah, I get why. I think that's really cool that he would go do that in a lab once a year. I know Portugal decriminalized their drugs, and they had a really, I think, positive experience with that, where people would go to the pharmacy and get their meth and their everything. And it
Right.
was like actually way better because it was regulated. They were getting tax revenue off of it. They were able to see how much people are taking. People weren't overdosing as much. They were giving out kits for testing for fentanyl. Like way less people were overdosing. Like it was just, I think, a really positive thing. So yeah, that's interesting to like put it in the broader sense too of like it's I don't think it's ever that simple where it's like this good, this bad, you know.
Exactly. There's always more nuance.
And kind of changing the topic a bit. So you've talked a lot on people that experienced depression, and we were talking about like SSRIs. What about when it comes to just someone who maybe has lower capacity for stress or they experience burnout or like maybe less, quote, severe experiences? How can someone who is just like 9 to 5, they're stressed out, maybe they're a parent. You said that you work with a lot of moms. like how can microdosing help someone who's maybe not depressed or suicidal, but is struggling in their day to day?
Yeah, I that's a good question, and it's funny. You call me Mushroom Jesus. I don't like to think of myself as Jesus, but I do prophesize and talk about mushrooms nonstop to everyone, and I literally like carry them with me a lot of times. So when it comes up, someone is a little interested. I'm like, oh, here you go, I got some. Um, but there's a few people that I've talked to and said like, hey, you should try mushrooms. It's done this for me and help this person and whatever. And a lot of people have said like, I'm not depressed, so I'm good. And it's I guess I got to change my messaging a little bit and how I frame it. But it's like, no, it really helps people who are depressed and anxious and all that. But it helps everyone just be better and improve. So even if you're not anxious, like you said, or something with like a minimal issue that you want to get better, even if you think you're good and you're doing well at work and you're generally happy, I still think it's something you could try because it can open your eyes, make you think a little bit differently, and just give you a little bit more energy, make you just a little bit less um, upset about little things, easier to make decisions. Another, back to being like a hippy dippy mushroom guy, and I think eventually maybe we'll have some science behind it, but I don't really care about science. I know it works. Is the mushrooms kind of lead you to what you need to be better or to fix what you're doing. So with the 10,000 people we've seen intentions vary from I'm trying to get off SSRIs to I'm trying to be able to communicate with my girlfriend better because we just don't communicate well, to I'm trying to be more grateful at work because I don't like work and I have to go there every day.
Hmm.
So it varies a lot. And the mushrooms kind of change what they do to you depending on what you need them to do. It's really hard to explain, but that's what it is. So it's if someone's just a little bit anxious, it'll give you that little bit of motivation to get through the day. If someone's tired and unmotivated, it'll give you that boost of energy. I went to the gym this morning on a microdose, and there's a lot of people who talk about like their performance at the gym is definitely improved at with mushrooms, and I think it's helping your brain just like think about the motions you're doing instead of just doing them, and just that intention and the connections it's making, it just makes you perform better. It helps moms. A lot of moms get stressed just dealing with kids. It's hard. So it helps them just like deal with it better, not maybe take on all of the kids' emotions and all that, organize their schedules, just be grateful, kind of similar to when you take mushrooms, you're just not scared of dying. You're just not scared.
I
Uh,
am curious too, like, because I've noticed this in myself. I feel like when I'm consistent with mushrooms, my capacity for stress increases, and I don't know what it does scientifically to your nervous system or physiology. Do you know like what mechanism that is?
no, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does nothing except it just makes you do that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, but yeah, you're right. It does do that for sure.
It's so interesting. And you mentioned something too, and we talked a lot about this on your social media during the election. But um, one thing, and they do have tons of studies on this too, is that it increases your empathy. And I've noticed that just relationally when I ha am microdosing or more than microdosing, I just notice I'm way more open-hearted to people's views or uh, whether it's like something really charged and political or whether it's just me talking with a friend or a partner about a topic that's tense, I notice I'm just more relaxed and able to see their point of view. Is that something that you see a lot in the chats that you have?
Yeah, I definitely think that, and I my theory, I guess, of why that is I think a lot of people, the majority of people who take mushrooms or psychedelics, general theme seems to be like realizing that we're all connected, we're all one. Zoom out, big picture, we're all one, and I think realizing we're all one makes you care about someone else because it's not someone else, it's you. It's just a different part of you. So I think that if that makes sense a little bit of helping the empathy is because most people are selfish and only care about themselves. But when you take mushrooms and you realize that we're all connected and like caring about my dog is actually caring about me or caring about you is caring about me, that helps raise empathy. Um, and I think too, some people have asked, just made me think of it of like, oh, you're so nice. Why are you risking this? Or why are you like giving away so many mushrooms, all these free trials, whatever? And a lot of, and I've heard other people say this before, like being nice a lot of times is a selfish thing. I'm
Mhm.
nice because it makes me feel good. I'm not nice to make you feel good. I am, but I'm mostly nice because it makes me feel good being nice. And also, I think a lot of people think this now. It sucks, but like the world outside is wild. And it doesn't matter how happy or good I am if the world is as crazy as it is right now. So, like, to me, to make myself have a better life, I need to make the world be better. And when the world is better and more empathetic and operating better, then I'll be better. Um, yeah.
That makes sense. I'm glad you asked yourself that question too, because I had that in my mind, but I like, because it is really incredible that you do are so generous.
Yeah, I never realized it as much until I started this, but and like I believe in a higher being way more after doing all these psychedelics for a number of reasons, DMT mostly, if you've ever tried that. But there's been times where I've been like scared, like we our biggest day we had 800 free trials ordered, which is like uh even with low cost, that's like over $5,000 just in like this is a lot of money. And sometimes like we'll have a big cost and I'll be like, maybe we should pause the free trials or maybe we should this that. And then I'm like, no, whenever I give something to the universe or send something out, it comes back in multiples, maybe not right away, but usually soon enough. And there's been a few times where like uh, if I gave you a care package and I gave you like a good amount of stuff, I'm like, yo, is that a bit much? I'll pack it up, I'll print your sticker, and right after we'll get like an order for exactly what I like sent you. And I don't know, it just like reaffirms no, what you give comes back. So like my goal is to give away as much as possible because it's gonna come back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and the last topic I have is like the future of medicinal mushrooms, really just your musings and thoughts on the legal landscape, because it is really interesting. We're kind of in a transitionary period, and in the last few years, I would say in the last maybe like 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of um, decriminalization and just a general, I think there is a general understanding movement towards understanding the value of um, these outlawed quote drugs, like even ketamine therapy is becoming a thing and psychedelic therapy and more of a recognition of their value in the healing space and therapeutic space and mental health space. So I'm just curious, like obviously no one knows the future, but just what your thoughts are as the future of the legal landscape.
Yeah, I like to be optimistic. I hope we're gonna make the future what we want it to be. But unfortunately, like looking at cannabis and how that's gone, it's looking like mushrooms are following a similar trajectory. And yeah, it feels like a lot of big business is trying to control it and regulate it. And that just sucks. I don't know. I'm trying to. I have again a lot of thoughts, but most likely, or like right now, the first couple states that have it legal or offered are for a lot of money, and you have to have a lot of licenses, and you have to register, and you got to do all this stuff for really no reason. When a lot of people just take a microdose is gonna help you. And when you look at like cannabis and all of the restrictions of like who can grow cannabis and who can
Mm,
sell it and where you can use it, a lot of the rules just don't make sense. but they're the rules. And it seems like mushrooms are kind of following a similar trajectory. Um, I I feel like we're out of time in life though, and I don't like to talk about politics or like the world, and I'm not going to really talk about politics, but we're at a time in the world where it seems like a lot of changes, big changes, are going to happen in the next few years, with like potential wars, potential natural disasters, just a lot of stuff going on where I kind of feel like it might get to a place where things are so drastic that maybe they'll just say uh, less regulation and like offer it to everyone. That's what I'm kind of hopeful for. I don't know, but
That's not what I was expecting.
wow, what were you expecting?
I don't know. But so like what I'm seeing now in my head is just like zombie apocalypse and they're like, yeah, do what you need to
No,
do.
not zombie apocalypse, but like realistically, I'm not trying to like think too negative or whatever, but there's Canada and Mexico right now are basically like, yo, we might not be friends with the US anymore. Florida, Texas, for the last like 10 years have kind of been saying, I don't know if we really want to be part of the US anymore. Cali recently has kind of been like, you know what, I don't really want to be part of the US anymore. During COVID, I've thought about this a little bit. It seemed like there was kind of like 7 regions of the US that kind of like stuck around and had the same values and stuff. It sucks to think like, hey, the United States won't be the United States in the future, but I don't really think that's like necessarily a bad thing if it's like an amicable divorce. Like when you have two parents with each other and they scream at each other and yell at each other and it's a very toxic relationship, that's not good for the kid. It's better if they divorce amicably. It's best if you have two parents probably, but if you divorce amicably and whatever, um, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. And I kind of think the same thing with the US is like the way it is right now is toxic, and maybe we should think of a way to kind of like um, dissolve a little bit, and then California, we can have psychedelics, and all the other states can do whatever they want.
Yeah, I could see that. It is crazy that the United States is even a country just culturally because we're so big and there's so many cultures and like subcultures in the States and yeah, it's
What I don't get is I like to think I try and love everyone and appreciate everyone, but there's a lot of people, I've talked about this before, similar like thoughts, and there's people who will be from uh, a super blue state and talk about people from a super red state like they're not good people. Oh, those are just whatever, and vice versa. And then when you posit to them like, oh, maybe we should have like an amicable divorce, they're like, no, this is the United States. Like we guys, it's like you were just talking crap on people. Why are you so fixated on keeping it a country if you don't like half the people in the country? You know what I mean? It's weird. I don't know.
yeah, I get it. The logic sometimes just doesn't go all the way through.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. I hope everything will be good no matter what. It's just how we get there.
Yeah, yeah. And is there any last thoughts you have on what you would like people to know about mushrooms or microdosing or psychedelics?
About mushrooms, I one of my friends, Symbiote. I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram. He's like a legend in mycology. I think he's going to be bigger than Paul Stamets when it's all said and done. But he always says all mushrooms are magical, and I really believe that. The magic mushrooms we're talking about are ones you really feel and really like can open you up to a lot. But how much shaga or reishi or turkey tail can help fight cancer, or cordyceps can give you energy, or there's some mushrooms that eat plastic and like make the soil better. When you really think about it, mushrooms are amazing. They do all different types of things. Magic ones are dope and they're good for mental health, but I really think there's a mushroom to solve just about all of the problems we have. They're a great source of food. They're cheap to cultivate. They're easy to cultivate. They can be used as like for material to make clothes. Um, they just help with a lot of things. So that's that about mushrooms. With psychedelics, I would say some of the psychedelics that aren't mushrooms seem a lot more scary. There might be more intense, but I think same as mushrooms, a lot of what you hear is usually worse than what it actually is. And I think experimenting is great, just being smart about experimenting, knowing what you're getting and kind of starting on a real small amount. A lot of people tend to like want to do as much as they can the first time because they're like, oh, I've got a high tolerance. I want to make sure I feel it. It's like, no, start small. But there's something cool about all psychedelics. I've learned a lot from a lot of them. Mushrooms are my favorite, but I really think they all have potential to help, and they should all really be legalized or decriminalized in the grand scheme. With microdosing, I would say intention is everything. So
Mhm.
definitely have intentions. Journaling is super important and reflecting. Having someone to talk to, whether it be a therapist, is great. A therapist who knows about microdosing is even better. But if you don't have resources to that, even just talking to a friend is useful. But like not internalizing everything and just getting it out is a very important thing. And I think that's about it.
Cool. And then can you just talk one final time on the free trial dose and then where people can find you on social media and beyond, like your website?
So the free trial comes with two of our weaker blends because we don't want people to start with to start tripping like you did your first time. But
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
comes with two of our blends. It comes with 10 capsules, so that's usually enough to get you through a month following the Fadiman protocol, which I can talk more about that, or you can learn more from like my Instagram page. We are at mushmoresupplements.com, and our email is anything at mushmoresupplements.com. So Jeremy at mushmoresupplements.com, mushmore at mushmoresupplements.com. Those are the best ways to contact us. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, wherever, but we get taken down all of the time, unfortunately. So the most consistent place will be emailing us if you don't know, and we'll tell you we're in Signal right now, or we're in Telegram right now, or this is our current Instagram. But I think emailing us, getting our free trial by using free trial Mushmore, and yeah, spreading the mushroom love.
Awesome. And you said, can you just say the website one final time as well?
Of course, I'm sorry, mushmoresupplements.com.
Yeah,
Uh,
perfect.
so one thing about that actually, uh, we have copycats, which is kind of cool. Be like, oh, we made it, but it sucks because the copycats are ruthless. But there's a copycat that's mushmoresupplement.com without like the S. And some of these copycat sites look exactly like ours. You just pay money and you don't get anything. So if you're ever unsure, if you haven't ordered before, you can always email us to make sure um, that you're getting it from the right place. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of the scamming going on.
Yeah, that's good to know too. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.